the worst Phoenix events, it's always the exact same thing happening. And that is volcanoes all around the world start outgassing and then shoving pumice and ash into the lower mesosphere. At the same time that red cosmic dust from outside of our world blankets the upper mesosphere. When the mesosphere is overwhelmed like that, it instantly plummets below that layer of atmosphere into a dark purple light type deal. But it doesn't get cold. It gets warmer and warmer like greenhouse gases. It increases oxygen content, ambient radiation. This is one thing that science has hidden from us very, very well. Very well. Anybody can research this. In 1902, ambient radiation from a volcano, St. Pierre, when Martinique was incinerated and 30 to 40,000 people lost their lives in seconds. After that blast occurred, Mount Pelée was still outgassing. This ambient, however you say it, radiation actually benefited humans. Because two of the scientists that were there, one was in his late 50s and one was in his mid 60s. And both of these men in 1902 grew 2 inches taller while they were there on the island. And this is exactly what we find in the mythological, traditional, and archaeological record. We find evidence of epithelial cartilage growth on ancient skeletons that was so massive that skeletons of people were much larger, and that some of the skeletons and many of the skeletons had these epithelial cartilage buildup all around their body that is inexplicable unless you take into consideration that they experienced a period of both massive growth and 2, longevity. They lived for a very long period of time. So this is the reason why we have ancient human, 100% Homo sapiens sapiens, but they're being called Neanderthal. They're being called Cro-Magnon, but they're 100% Homo sapiens sapiens. So it's this epithelial cartilage mystery has been noted by many researchers. It's even Nephilim researchers who believe that there was a mix in species. I don't believe that. I used to believe in the Nephilim theory. I even had a website called Nephilim Archives. I no longer believe in that theory because I'm not a religionist anymore. But I fell for the old Babylon, the Babylon model of history, and a lot of people still buy into that history. And that history is that the Watchers came down from heaven, fallen angels came down from heaven, had sex with human women, and the offspring of those human women were the giants called the Nephilim. This is the Babylonian version of history by which the Jews in Babylon in the 5th century actually recorded when they wrote the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, Book of Jasher, the Old Testament, a bunch of rabbinical writings, the Haggadah, the Midrashic text. When they put all these things together, that's where they got their core material from, the writings of Babylon. And Babylon has always told us the exact opposite of the truth. In my historical researches, I found the opposite was true. I found that humans had grown to astonishing sizes because of the vapor canopy. And then when the vapor canopy collapsed, this caused that the surviving titans, they basically had offspring that were gigantic. They weren't titanic. The next generation of humans were much smaller, and they looked upon their grandparents, their parents and grandparents, like, wow, y'all are giants. Y'all are gigantic. But the word titan wasn't used till later. The word Titan was used when the 3rd generation was born. When the 3rd generation was born, the first generation was too old to produce offspring now. Now the 2nd generation, which were huge too, but nowhere near as big as their moms and dads, the 3rd generation were normal-sized humans. The normal-sized humans looked at their parents as giants, but they looked at their grandparents as titans. All of this is within a 100-year span, and it totally makes sense of the old Greek traditions, the Achaean traditions, all the old legends that we find in Hesiod, and especially in the Theogony, everything mentioned by Diodorus Siculus in the histories, and especially Sanchoniathon. When we put all this material together from the old mythological record, we find that a former creation was destroyed, and three different generations of humans lived in the world at the exact same time. Now, about 700-800 years after this, the Babylonians rewrote the histories, and their view was that evil angels dropped from the sky and basically raped a bunch of human women. They took those all they chose, and it gave birth to giants. This view is unique. This Judeo-Christian view of the origin of giants and titans is absolutely unique. What I mean by that is that every other belief system that holds that same model can be traced to Judeo-Christian belief system, because those that are not a part of the Judeo-Christian belief system don't hold that at all, about fallen beings from the sky coming, having sex with human women, giving birth to giants. That is strictly Judeo-Christian. What makes these calendars and all the other calendars of the ancient world so unique is that we have been able to determine that there were all day count systems in the ancient times. Nobody cared about years. The largest unit of measurement that was employed during the vapor canopy period was not a year. It was a lunation. It was lunar cycles. It was during the reign of the goddess, and it was during the reign of the priestesses, and the lunar reckoning was matriarchal. The year and the solar cycle only happened when that world ended in a cataclysm, known as the collapse of the vapor canopy, or the great flood, or the day the sky fell. When that occurred, then the sun was born, and it started all the solar calendars. It started the sun ages of the Vedic and of the ancient American systems. The first sun, the second sun, the third sun. Remember, the apocalypse is the stone, is represented on the stone of the fifth sun. So this was a day count system. This was 360 days per annum that every civilization in the ancient world used a 360-day diurnal calendar, meaning the rotation of the stars for one turning, the appearance of one sun was a day. 363 was a day, and it took 360 rotations to equal a year. And nobody changed their calendars like we do today to account for the seasons before the flood, because even Genesis remarks that the seasons didn't exist until after the cataclysm. The dark satellite appears in our world every 394.5 years, which is exactly 144,000 days. The dark satellite has been doing this for a very long time. When it appears, it creates whole entire alterations in the holofield. It is the origin of the division of tongues, the Tower of Babel story. It is the origin of the division of the calendar in 713 BC, and totally changed the 360-day year to 365.24 or 25. So days a year. This is when 713 BC, which was an actual backend of the Mayan long count. This is when all the calendars in the world had to change. This is also direct evidence that we're living in a holography and we're not living in a natural physical realm, a physical universe. The change from 360 days to 365.24 days after 1,000 years would have altered the 138-year periodicity of the Phoenix so bad that it would have never been able to reappear at all in 246 AD. 378 AD. It would have never been able to show back up in 522 AD, in 660 AD, in 798 AD, in 936 AD. It would have never been able to appear in 1074 AD. It would have never been able to appear to initiate the Children's Crusade and the mass vanishing of children all over Europe in 1212 AC, AD, or 1350 AD, or 1488 in the year that Mother Shipton was born. The Phoenix phenomenon would have never occurred in 1626 AD and did some massive restructuring of North America, changing lakes and emptying shallow seas and creating great lakes and doing all this destruction throughout North America just decades before Europeans began expanding all over North America. It would have never been able to appear in 1764 AD for astronomer Hoffman to see it through his telescope and enter it into the Royal Astronomical Records as a visitation of Vulcan, which was also seen by 500,000 Europeans as it darkened the sun. It would have never reappeared in 1902 and initiated all the strange things I have in 5 different videos on 1902. It would have never been able to do that if we lived in a physical, real universe, because the change of the year from 360 days to 365 days would have completely changed the 138-year periodicity, and additional to that, it would have never allowed it to reappear on May 15th ever again. It would have been different days of the calendar. So what we have is an overriding program that's not affecting an original subroutine. The original subroutine is the Phoenix holography. It's unaffected. But the overwritten program changes all other calendars in the world and the very way humans perceive the unfolding of historical events, timekeeping systems. But the Phoenix remains unchanged. The Nemesis X object holography remains unchanged. The periodicity of the dark satellite remains unchanged. These things still appear as they're supposed to appear according to the original chronology, not the amended version that something introduced. Remember, God is not the author of confusion, something else is. Our timekeeping system has changed. Remember, I just started the video out with we had a 360-day year, and then it changed to 365.25 days. That changed all the calendars. But even more so, we had a totally different zodiac in the ancient sky. We also had lunar calendars. The idea that the sky is fixed and that what we see at nighttime is what our ancients saw, that's total BS. That's uniformitarianism. Yeah, the whole entire stellosphere could have shifted 30, 40 degrees and then continued, and this is what we're seeing now, which is the reason why no star patterns conform to the zodiac that we have today. Leo does not look like a lion. Libra does not look like scales. Scorpio used to be an ancient eagle. It was changed to a scorpion. But Gemini does not look like 2 pillars. No. None of those star patterns look anything like we are told that they are. And the reason for this is because the last pole shift, the entire stellosphere shifted 30 degrees. How do we know this? Because the Great Pyramid was built before the flood. And the Great Pyramid used to be 0 degrees latitude, 0 degrees longitude, but it's not there now no more. Now the Great Pyramid is 30 degrees north latitude. There's been a shift of 30 degrees, which means the entire heavens has been shifted 30 degrees, which means the 23.5 degree obliquity of the Earth has shifted the actual zodiacal belt 30 degrees off from where we see it today. That changes everything. And everything Fomenko shows in astronomy is not evidence of missing centuries. It's evidence that Fomenko is missing historical context.